Hello my dear students, welcome to the class. A very good result in the MCQs. I am happy with that, so are you. But now we are talking about our environment, and in the previous class we learned how to identify the biodegradable and the non-biodegradable waste material. Yes, because this waste is generated by us. Therefore, it is our responsibility to see that it is properly disposed of also. And so, one suggestion is that you always have to see that you do not mix the non-biodegradable and the biodegradable waste, because we have seen that the non-biodegradable waste persists in the environment and it cannot be broken down by the decomposers. So, put them in the different dustbins so that the biodegradable can be converted into manure, it can be composted, and the non-biodegradable can be taken care of by recycling it. That will be our contribution to manage our garbage, and it is very, very important, and it is going to result in a very, very clean and healthy environment, which is required by all the living organisms to survive. Now, in today's class, we are going to study about the components of the biosphere. Yes, we have already learned that biosphere is that zone of the earth that supports life. Now, life cannot exist everywhere. So, you require a good supporting system for all the living organisms, then only they will be able to survive. So, the smaller components of the biosphere which we study according to our convenience are known as ecosystems, because there is huge diversity of the landscape, of the different type of water bodies, and the air, the temperature is different at different places. So, that is why we have very small units of biosphere which we can study very easily. Now, what is an ecosystem? An ecosystem is the interaction of all the living and the non-living components of the environment in a small area. So, we have many ecosystems that we can study. Now, we are talking about the biotic and the abiotic components. What are biotic components? Now, you know it, bios means living. So, the living components of the ecosystem, they are known as biotic component. That means it includes the living organisms, plants, animals, and of course, the microorganisms. Then abiotic components. Abiotic means the non-living, or we also call them as the physical components. So, they include temperature, that is heat of the sunlight, then the rainfall, the air, water, wind, and soil with lot of minerals. So, these are abiotic components. Now, there is interaction. Yes, there is always interaction between the living and the non-living components. Now, there are different kinds of ecosystems. As I told you that we cannot study the entire earth in one seat. We have to divide that into many smaller units. Now, let us discuss that with an example. The different types of ecosystems are based on, you can say, the type of habitat that the living organisms use, or we can say whether they are made by the nature or by man. So, the type of ecosystems are, number one, natural ecosystems. All the ecosystems which are actually given to us by the nature, they are known as natural ecosystems. So, the examples are forest, sea, ocean, mountains, valleys, deserts. Yes, all these things are gifted to us by the nature. So, these are known as natural ecosystems. Then artificial ecosystems, man-made. You make an aquarium, then a field is cultivated by a farmer, or you have garden and a park. So, all these are known as artificial ecosystems. Now, depending on the land and the water, again we can classify them as terrestrial or aquatic ecosystem. Now, terrestrial ecosystems means it is very simple, on the land. So, all the ecosystems which exist on the land, they are known as terrestrial ecosystems. So, for example, forest, that is on the land. So, you have the deserts, you have the gardens, you have the field. So, all mountains, valleys, all these are on the land. So, these are known as terrestrial ecosystems. Now, we have aquatic ecosystems. Again, it is very simple for you, isn't it? You can also make a list along with me, that is the sea, ocean, river, pond, lake. So, all these are the aquatic ecosystems. Now, when we study the ecosystem, then we study the interaction between these different kind of organisms which survive there. Now, for example, let us say you want to study the ecosystem of a desert. So, you require a notebook and a pen and go to that area and then first see what are the different kind of biotic components which are present. That means you have to make a list of the different type of plants which are found there and the different kinds of animals that you see there. Then you have to make a list of all the abiotic components that you see there. That means the type of the soil which is present, that is of course the sand, and then the type of rainfall that that place receives and the heat which is received by that area, that means the temperature which is very high. So, when you are making a list of all these abiotic components, that means the non-living components. So, then you are able to study how these living organisms are able to survive by using these abiotic components. So, this helps us to know that what different kind of adaptations are required by these plants and animals. Simply, you can also study a small ecosystem, that is your aquarium. So, in the aquarium, you have some very small plants, you have some very small fishes and the water, and of course, you supply oxygen. So, when you are making a list of all the living organisms which are present in your aquarium and the abiotic components, that is the non-living components which are present in the aquarium, yes, you are studying ecosystem. So, in this way, when we are studying the ecosystem, we are actually studying these two categories of the components, and this helps us to understand the type of life the living organisms are able to live in that particular area. When you move in a park, then just don't play and come back. Learn a lot about the environment. Just be alert. See the different kind of beetles or insects or ants and butterflies which want to befriend you. And you also make a list of the different varieties of plants that you see in the park. Now, when next time you are going to go to the park will appear very friendly to you because you know so many living organisms which are waiting for you and they want to see you score many runs. Isn't that interesting? So, this way we can also participate and understand our environment more. Yes, you have a question?
Ma'am, can biotic and abiotic components exist independently?
Very good question. A very alert student I have. Now, when we are discussing the biotic and the abiotic components, then it is very interesting to see that the non-living components, that is the abiotic components, are not dependent on the living organisms. Actually, it is the living organism which wants all the abiotic components to survive. For example, the place where living organisms are not there, you will have all the abiotic components. That is, it is going to receive the sunlight, you will have the rainfall, the soil with the minerals is present there, the water body is also there, and air is also present there. Now, there may be some life or there may not be any life there, but just come to another place where the living organisms survive. So, can you imagine that a living organism is living at a place without air, without water, without soil and minerals? Not at all. So, that is why we see that the biotic components will not be able to survive in the absence of the abiotic components. And now, children, we are going to study in detail about the different groups of living organisms. The living organisms can be grouped basically into two categories. Number one, producers, and number two, consumers. It's very easy. I can see the smile on your faces. Producers means the green plants. You have been studying that since primary classes, and we already know that the process by which the green plants make their own food is known as photosynthesis. So, photons, that is light, and synthesis is to make. So, the green plants, they are able to make their own food by using the sunlight, chlorophyll, the soil which is having lot of minerals, and of course, the carbon dioxide from the air and water, and they prepare lots and lots of food for us. So, the second category is consumers. That means the organisms which consume the food which is prepared by the plants. So, two broad categories, producers and consumers. Now, we have different categories of consumers also. Yes, you have a question?
Ma'am, what are the types of parasites?
Okay, very good question. When we are discussing about the consumers, then it can also be classified according to the type of nutrition that they have. For example, the parasitic nutrition. In case of the parasitic nutrition, these are responsible for taking the nutrition from the living organisms. That means the organisms which are living, they provide nutrition to them. So, for example, there are two types of parasites. Number one, endoparasites, and number two, ectoparasites. So, endoparasites which live inside the body of other organisms. So, we call them as the endoparasites. For example, tapeworm. But some of the parasites, they live outside the body of the other organisms. We call them as ectoparasites or external parasites. For example, the leech. It sucks the blood by attaching to the skin of a living animal and then gets its nutrition. Now, different other categories of consumers are again very simple, that is the herbivores. The herbivores, they eat the plants. Then we have carnivores. The carnivores, they eat the herbivores. Then we have omnivores which eat the products of plants as well as animals. So, these are the different categories, and of course, that we have just now discussed, that is parasites. So, they are responsible for getting the nutrition from the other living organisms. Now, all these consumers are directly or indirectly dependent on the producers. For example, when we are discussing carnivores, then can we say that a lion is also dependent on grass? Yes, we can. How? Because the lion is going to eat a herbivorous animal, and the herbivorous animal is dependent on plants. If plants are not available for the herbivorous animal, there will be no food for the carnivores also. So, we can see that there is a huge interaction between all the organisms which are present in the environment. And not to forget the very important, that is decomposers. Now, what are the decomposers? The decomposers are the bacteria and the fungus which are present in the soil, and these are responsible for converting the dead plants and animals back into the simple molecules. So, they are able to break down the complex organic molecules into simple inorganic molecules, which again can be reused by the new plants, and then they can be eaten by the animals. So, this is known as mineral cycle. So, for example, step number 1, there are minerals in the soil, right. Now, they are absorbed by the plants, plants eaten by the animals. Now, plants and animals die, they are in the soil, and then the decomposers act on this and again mix all the minerals back into the soil. So, this is a complete cycle, and what does that result into? This results into taking care of the waste of all the organic matter, and it is also responsible for adding manure, that means adding minerals to the soil. So, it adds fertility to the soil, and these minerals of the dead plants and animals are reused by the new plants. So, the place where lot of leaves or the plant parts are decayed, that soil is very fertile. And not to forget that the decomposers are responsible for cleaning up the place. Wherever there were parts of the dead plants and animals, all this space has been wiped off by the waste, and the decomposers, they have cleaned the entire place. So, just imagine if there were no decomposers in the soil, then there wouldn't be any place to walk, because all the garbage would be spread everywhere, and no decomposers means a stinking environment where you will have all the dead plants and the animals piled up one on top of the other, and there will be huge mountains of all the dead living organisms. We cannot even think about that. So, the decomposers, they are very advantageous to us. They have huge importance in recycling the minerals which are present in the soil. And so, my dear students, I hope these were very simple concepts which are properly understood by you. So, do the exercises properly. I will see you in the next class. And now, my dear students, let us summarize all the important points. Ecosystem is the interaction of living and non-living substances. Biotic components are living organisms. Abiotic components are non-living substances. Ecosystem is always made up of biotic and abiotic components. Types of ecosystems: natural, artificial, terrestrial and aquatic. living organisms can be classified as producers and consumers. Consumers are grouped as herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, parasites. Decomposers break down the complex organic substances into inorganic substances. And now, my dear students, to watch the next video, please attempt the following questions. Question number 1. Biotic components of ecosystem are A. Plants, B. Animals, C. Microorganisms, D. All of these. Question number 2. Interaction of biotic and abiotic components is called A. Ecosystem, B. Biosystem, C. Hydrosystem, D. Environment. Question number 3. The complex organic substances are broken down into simple inorganic substances by A. Producers, B. Consumers, C. Decomposers, D. Omnivores.